Welcome to the Success Pick and Mix podcast. I'm your host, Nicky Raby, a professional pick and mixer. I'm a personal brand coach, a speaker, an actor, a creator, and a podcaster. I'm on a mission to help you find and create your version of success. Your pick and mix of life and business on your terms. A blend that complements your personality, your goals, and your circumstances. Since 2018, I've been sharing interviews and mini episodes to help you unlock your next step, to make it real and make it happen. Round here, we dream big. We go for the ideal version. We talk about money and make moves our future selves would be proud of. This podcast is free and available for you whenever you need it. So do rate, review, and subscribe for new episodes. If you want to go deeper with my support, check out my freebies house and unlock the rooms you choose. nickyraby.com/freebies house. I also have workshops, programs, and one-on-one bespoke offerings. For prices and availability, go to nickyraby.com. Thank you, as always, for spending some time with me and my guests. Now, on to today's episode. In today's episode, I'm talking to Alison Perry, who is a writer, a blogger, and a fellow podcaster. And if you haven't listened to her podcast, you absolutely should. There's some cracking interviews on there. I wanted to talk to Alison today about how you forge this career for yourself. So when you have lots of skills and talents, how do you sellotape them all together in a really professional way, clearly, and actually make money from it and really forge out that career for yourself? It's a really interesting chat. I think you'll get lots from it. So feel free to write stuff down or come and join in the conversation over on Instagram at Nicky Raby. Also, as well, if you're feeling inspired and you're feeling like you've got that idea cooking, but you're not quite sure what to do with it, come on over to my coaching page on my website. There's loads of information, and there may be a way that I can help you one-to-one or one of my online courses. The show notes, as always, nickyraby.com/podcast. Here's the episode. Enjoy. Hi, Alison. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Nikki. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm sure people have heard of your podcast, but can you just start by telling us what you do and how you sort of describe your job description, if there is such a thing?
It's really hard to describe what I do. So I am a writer, a blogger, a podcaster. I kind of just do a little bit of lots of different things, which I guess is the way that so many of us are going these days. So I split my time between working on my blog and working on my podcast, and kind of make a bit of money via brands who want to reach my audience, basically, in a nutshell.
Lovely. And what was because I guess the things that you're describing now sort of weren't invented when you were at school. Well, apart from the sort of writing, they weren't sort of traditional jobs. What did you want to be when you grew up?
So when I was at school, my dream was to be the editor of Smash Hits magazine. I don't know if you remember Smash Hits.
I really do. Yeah, absolutely.
To the point where when I was about 16, I wrote a letter to the then editor of Smash Hits and just was like, oh, by the way, just to let you know, I'm going to have your job one day. So can you invite me in to do some work experience, please? And he was very nice about it. And so that was my dream. And when I went to uni and did media studies and ended up, my first job was at Top of the Pops on their website. And I used to kind of skulk around in the corridors backstage of the TV show being recorded. And as a 21-year-old, part of my job was to kind of grab people like Bono from U2 or Chris Martin from Coldplay and ask them quickfire questions. So it was kind of terrifying, but amazing as a 21-year-old for this to be my actual job.
And bizarre, like, I'm just thinking probably selfies wasn't even a thing at that stage, or being able to take a quick snap. So, like, you hope that people definitely believe you. Like, no, this actually did happen, even though it's not recorded. I was with Bono for 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, I mean, the smartphones didn't exist. And also I think it just, it wouldn't have looked professional if I'd been like whipping out a camera. I mean, digital cameras didn't really even exist back then. We're talking about kind of 2000 and 2001. We're really talking about quite a long time ago. I'm showing my age.
Well, that's good. I think they were all sort of the tail end of all my student days, and so there's very few little photographic evidence of that time, which is probably a good thing.
It's a really good thing, and it's also really good that obviously social media wasn't a thing back then as well, because I am fairly sure I would have just messed up big style if social media had existed in those days.
Totally. And the fact being, slightly chubby and having ginger hair at school, let alone kind of being online, it was hard enough navigating those days in real life, let alone the trolls at home. But oh god, anyway, so
cruel.
Those were the days. So how did it then kind of start moving into this next phase and sort of navigating much more of this digital world and the powers of social media?
I guess so. I kind of started working for various teen and women's magazines, and as things like MySpace and Bebo were appearing, working on magazines that were very much being read by young people, we were interested in what was going on, in that kind of online digital world, because our readers were obsessed with all that kind of stuff. And so I just took a real natural interest in it. And when I worked on More magazine, I set up a Facebook page, which was a brand new thing that Facebook had just introduced, and made it kind of a bit of a pet project of mine. And basically ended up at one point, we had more Facebook fans, as they were called, when pages first launched,
yes.
and then any other women's magazine in the UK. We had more than Elle magazine, we had more than Vogue magazine. We were like killing it because we had this late teens, early 20-something audience of women who were properly engaged with being online and our brand online, and it was such a massive learning curve for me. And so I just basically was almost like a sort of self-appointed social media expert. And then I went on maternity leave. I had my daughter 8 years ago and was sitting at home twiddling my thumbs thinking, okay, well, she's sleeping. I, feel like I need to use my brain for something more than just
Homes Under the Hammer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I love a bit of daytime telly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Roll around having these twins. Absolutely.
Phil and Holly, love them to bits. But yeah, so I just decided to start a blog, and it kind of just took off from there. And there was no big master plan. There was no big, I'm going to start a blog and then it's going to lead on to XYZ. It was just me trying to, fulfill a need that I had at that point to be a bit creative. And also, I'd been on this massive learning curve with learning how to become a mum, and I was still learning and making mistakes and, all the stuff that goes with it in that first kind of hazy year. And I really had this strong desire to reach out to other mums and to help them and impart any kind of wisdom that I had learned, and just get a bit of a conversation going, really.
I think that's so important, especially because as a pregnant woman, you are really adored in that moment, and it's all about the build-up, and it's so exciting telling everybody and, getting ready and all. I don't want to put you off because I know you're going through this again, but you've done it once, so it's that sort of sense. But then it's kind of the reality strikes, and I sort of remember on that first Friday night after coming out of hospital, I was like, oh, wow. Okay, so we've just got to kind of figure this out then. So any kind of conversation of somebody saying, and that's why I sort of reach for Instagram and blogs overnight, is because you go, oh, I think there must be other people who do know this and have figured it out. So I'm just going to tap into that.
Yeah. And it's that kind of almost like that 3 a.m. thing when you're awake in the middle of the night, feeding your baby or trying to get your baby off to sleep. And that feeling of there are other people out there doing this and I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And, when I was at that stage 8 years ago, Instagram wasn't around. it was very much Twitter. And so I would be on Twitter finding other mums to follow and chat to. And it just, that feeling of connection, I just think you can't beat it. And as much as we criticize social media and talk about, the damage it's doing, there's so much that I think that it's brought us that, that can't be dismissed.
Definitely, and that also it's so easily accessible as well. And I think sometimes, you would never think twice about going halfway across London if you live in London to, some house party because somebody is going to be there, when you're 20. But the thought of even just seeing sometimes your best friends, like the logistics are really hard to even do. So Instagram, I think it's wonderful if it's used in the right way, and it tends to be a really lovely place on the whole, I would say. But so I guess, how did you feel about your career after motherhood? Did it change the way you wanted to work, or what was important, or how did you navigate that next phase?
I think to begin with, I was very much, I'm going to go back to work and, basically business as usual. And then I very quickly realized that that's not always possible. And I kind of felt for quite a long time that I wasn't doing either thing very well. I felt like I wasn't doing my job very well, and I wasn't being a very good mum. And I think that's a really common feeling to have. And I remember chatting to, a couple of people that I worked with at the time. I worked at Look magazine at that point, and them just really reassuring me and saying, look, that's totally normal.
Yeah.
And you are doing a really great job, and you're actually putting way too much pressure on yourself, and you're setting that bar way too high. So yeah, I think that after a few years of feeling like that, I decided to go freelance, and I thought, actually, I need to rebalance things here, and I need to make work and motherhood work for me in a much more balanced way. So I went freelance, and a few of my colleagues were like, oh, are you leaving to work on your blog? And I was like, no, honestly, my blog is really just a hobby. And alongside going freelance, I decided to do a little bit more work on my blog, and then that ended up really taking off completely. It really wasn't a big master plan. It wasn't this big kind of, it really wasn't a big plan. But I was thrilled when it did take off, and it's become as popular as it is. So. And
have you worked out what that process was, or what that? I mean, do you have the magic formula of what that thing was? Or presumably it was a combination of things as well. But what kind of really worked for you? Because I think also people do talk about these things like, oh, I'd like to start something, but yeah, I've tried a few things, but nothing's really stuck. How did you get the traction that you clearly got and continue to?
I honestly don't know. I don't know whether it's a combination of just having that magazine background, that editorial background, where I'm constantly approaching things from that point of view. A lot of it is probably just luck, I'll be honest. I think that the fact that I have always been very open to having a two-way conversation has probably helped. That
yes.
I don't feel like I'm broadcasting to people. I'm not interested in elevating myself to like a level of fame where, people are, adoring me and are my fans. Like that is not in that. I have no interest in that whatsoever. What I am interested in is sharing my experiences, getting feedback from other people who might have been through something similar, causing a reaction in some way. So even if I write a provocative opinion piece and people are disagreeing with me, then that's great. Like bring it on. Like I will have a debate with you, and we will do it in a way that is, grown up and fair and friendly, and then we'll move on with our day. So I think that's, possibly, something to do with it. But I don't know. I don't think there is some sort of magic formula.
And I think sometimes if you dissect it too much, it's like, oh no, I've lost it. It's like those weird things that you do at school fetes, you know, where you have the metal hoop and you have to kind of move it over the things. It's like, you just have to keep going with the flow. Otherwise the thing's going to beep and everything's going to explode. And
don't overthink it.
Don't overthink it. Yeah. How did you start by going about getting freelance work? Because I know lots of my clients or people I talk to, they do want to make that transition, but perhaps they're not in that sort of entrepreneurial place or headspace just yet, but they might want to go freelance. Do you have any advice of how you start to do that and build that reputation or build those contacts?
I think it's a really hard thing to do. There's no point in kind of sugarcoating it. And I think that I underestimated how hard it would be. I mean, for me, when I went freelance, it was I was going to be writing for other magazines, and I really definitely underestimated how many contacts you need and how much time you need to devote to pitching ideas and meeting people and really making contacts and forging really strong relationships, because so much of getting work as a freelancer is about what you've done in the past. It's that classic chicken and egg thing where if you are new to it and you haven't got loads of a big portfolio of work, then people are perhaps less likely to take a punt on you and hire you. So it's hard. I mean, I would say one of my kind of top tips would be to meet people, in person as much as you can.
Yes.
Go out for coffee with people, to go to, events and get chatting to people and do that kind of, really pull yourself out of your comfort zone and be brave and approach people and get chatting, because I really feel like those are the times when I've met people and then followed it up. It's very often led to work and opportunities. And I've looked back and thought, oh my goodness, I'm so glad I was brave and I actually did that back then. So
definitely. And as soon as you start becoming a mum as well, there's always some sort of excuse not to go. You're too tired, or your baby's teething, or your teeth are falling out, or, all of these things. And, it can be very easy to sort of tell yourself you're not ready. But if you can push yourself a little bit, you're right. You always reap the rewards later down the line. Even if it's not immediately, something might come around 6 months, but you've got that sort of baseline with somebody, haven't you?
Yeah. And also I think another thing that I think is really important is championing other people. So
yes.
I'm a big believer in putting other people in contact with other people. So, if you're having coffee with someone and they're telling you how they really want to do X, Y, Z, or meet that person, or they're really interested in that kind of area or that line of work, saying, oh, I know someone who you should speak to, I'm going to connect you, and being that kind of, that helping other people, not in a kind of selfish, oh, then they'll help me way, but I just think that it just cultivates that kind of feeling of everyone's helping everyone and supporting each other.
Oh, I totally agree. And I think that sometimes we can feel like there's a finite number of opportunities, whereas actually the opportunity that you're going for right then might not be right for you. I've sort of learned that in the acting industry, is that my only responsibility as an actor in the casting room is to do a good job and don't be an idiot, and just kind of try and give my best interpretation. Whether it's right or not, it may not be for that thing, but if it was good, then it's always a mark in the sand of like, okay, we'll bring her in for something else. But I've had the opposite as well, of sort of going in and reading with semi-known actors, who I won't mention because I am the bigger person in this situation, of saying, shall we read in the waiting room while we're waiting to go in? And she was like, looked at me like, no. And because there was that sort of ego to it. And actually, we're all in this together, really.
Definitely. That's so true.
Oh, and so how have you decided what to write about? Because I think this is the thing, especially, and I love Not Another Mummy Blog, but I guess what you're writing about is personal on one level. So what are your your rules in terms of making it personal and relatable, but without bearing your soul, if you know what I mean?
I think I'm always asking that question, and I think that for me, it's a case of if I think that what I've experienced will help other people, that sounds really worthy and really naff. But for example, I've been through things like PND and anxiety and IVF treatment, and I've written about all of these things, but in a way that I feel will help other people. I'm not just kind of, regurgitating all my feelings. I'm not using my blog as like an online diary. I will always try and approach a topic with some kind of angle. And yeah, that seems to work quite well. And I have other kind of personal rules, like I don't really talk about my daughter that much. I don't feature, her face on Instagram or in blog photography, which can be a little bit tricky sometimes. Especially when I really want to just capture a moment.
Yeah, because you're a proud mum as well, that you want to show her off, of course.
Exactly. But I really feel like, I feel like her digital footprint is hers to make, and it's not for me to decide how much, I don't want to plaster her all over the internet and then her get to age 16 and feel horribly resentful that I've done that. Ironically, she really wants her own YouTube channel, and she keeps begging me to put her on YouTube. And I'm like,
I love it. She's like, I've got affiliates, and I've set up my I'm going to be tracking this, and I've got a brand partnership actually. How brilliant! That's exactly. So great. But also as well, the jobs that our kids will probably end up doing, they probably haven't even been invented yet, which is totally mad.
Absolutely. But yeah.
I know it's my crazy. Kid will be near a fire engine because he's a bit of a lover. We spend a lot of time at that fire station. But I guess how, like you've touched on, going through certain things. How do you switch off from social media, and how do you kind of have that really full life behind the scenes as well, but also not let because I guess now you've built up a big audience, is like, how do you not let that comment that person say affect you, and what sort of tools or techniques do you use to sort of keep everything in check?
Oh, it's really hard. I've been really lucky, and until recently haven't had much negativity. I don't know why, but I've always felt a little bit smug about it. Like, oh no, I don't get much, I don't really get negative comments, and I've never been trolled. And then kind of in the last maybe 2 or 3 months, there's been a little bit of negativity aimed towards me. And I have found it quite hard to deal with, if I'm honest, because I have tried to react always in a very professional way. So I've always tried to, so I won't get into arguments online, and I won't, slag somebody off, and I won't get into a kind of tit for tat conversation. But then what I end up doing is overthinking and overanalyzing, and I would love to be able to say that I can reply to an unkind comment and then just put my phone down and get on with my day.
Yeah.
But I have found that really, really hard. And I think that it's one of those things that possibly the more it happens, the thicker your skin gets, and the easier possibly it gets to just brush it off. But it hasn't happened enough to me that I'm at that point yet. I'm still at the point where I really worry about things and really kind of overanalyze. Oh my goodness, but why has that person said that thing to me?
No, I think you're right. And sometimes, especially if, your parents told you, like, be kind to people, and certainly our generation, that sense of like, well, even if you think that, don't say it or count to 10. Whereas suddenly in the online world, people are playing by different rules and saying what they think, and some of it is not very kind. And you still sort of go, God, I can't actually believe that they said that out loud.
Yeah, it's really hard, and I do think that that's just life, and that is just the way that and our kids are going to have to deal with all of this growing up. So actually, maybe it's a good thing that we are experiencing it, because then we can pass on those tips to our kids and help them navigate it when it happens to them.
Yeah, I hope so. And we'll book them some therapy as well. Get them all sorted. How did the move into the podcast happen? Because also as well, you're a great writer and you've got that sort of that written form. What made you want to go and expand it into other areas?
I mean, I've always been that kind of person who's thinking, right, what's next?
Yeah.
And a few years ago, everybody that I knew in the kind of blogging world they were all really embracing video and YouTube. And I tried really hard to get on board with YouTube, but got to the point where I thought, this really isn't for me. This isn't a natural fit. This just feels like way too much hard work. And so I guess I was always kind of thinking, right, well, what is the next thing that I can do? And just from listening to podcasts, and it was actually when I was listening to Emma Gannon's podcast about a year and a half ago, I was driving along listening to her interview. I think it was Liv Purvis, who's a fashion blogger. And it just kind of made me think, hang on a minute, no one is doing this. At that point, there was nobody who was creating a podcast where mums were being interviewed. And I was like, I could do this because I can interview people. That's like, part of my job. So I basically just researched. I messaged Emma Gannon, who I knew, and said, right, what kit have you got?
Tell me everything.
Yeah, tell me. And I messaged a few other people who I knew who had podcasts, like what mic do you use and how does it work? And then kind of through that and then Google pieced together enough information to then basically start it. So I launched it in July 2017 and just discovered that I loved it, because what's not to love about rocking up at someone's house and spending an hour drinking tea and chatting to them and then leaving and then just, editing it all together and putting it out there. It's just, the most fun thing ever.
Yeah, and have you found that people really feel like they know you now because you're in people's ears a lot?
Possibly. I don't know. I mean, one thing that surprises me quite often is people will message me saying, I've just listened to this episode. And I'll be like, oh yeah, that guest was brilliant, wasn't she? Oh yeah, I loved that. And they'll be like, no, but I really loved listening to you as well. And I'm like, oh, okay, like I'm just the one asking questions.
But you're doing it brilliantly as well. This is the thing. And I think sometimes it can be, we're not media trained, none of us who are in this kind of space. And we are sort of, I guess, making it up as we go along as well. So when people ask questions of you, you have to feel comfortable and you never want to feel like you're being told off. So you've got to keep the conversation free flowing as well. And it's definitely a skill. And it's great. Did you know that you kind of what it was going to be, or did you has it changed as you've gone through?
I think it has developed, but then again, it's that thing, isn't it, that when you are creating anything on a regular basis, it's very normal to be kind of like analysing it and thinking, okay, actually, I think I need to be doing this a bit more or a bit less of that. So it has kind of developed developed a little bit kind of over the year that I've been doing it, but I very much started it thinking, okay, every episode I'm going to have a person talking about a topic. And so my first kind of job was to brainstorm what are the big topics in motherhood and parenting, and who do I think would be great to talk on those subjects, which is still something that I do. That's still the kind of how I approach it.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. And also I think that idea of people knowing what they're going to expect and having that familiarity and knowing sort of what they've signed up for, it's brilliant. With your babies on the way, how oh yeah, totally forgot about that for like 3 seconds. How are you sort of thinking about this next chapter in terms of work, and how different is it to the first time at this sort of age and stage?
Well, last time I had a baby, I was employed, took maternity leave, and it all felt quite straightforward and quite normal. And this time around, I'm like, I don't know what to do, because when you're self-employed, it's not quite as simple as just rocking off on maternity leave.
Yeah.
In quite a lot of areas of self-employment, you feel a bit like, but if I take, a few months off, then that will really negatively impact my work. People will forget about me and, all of that kind of stuff. I'm really lucky that my husband will be around. So he's taking a bit of a career break. So he is going to be around. And the plan is that after a chunk of time, whatever that is, of me not working, I will then start working again, and he will, be around to support me and the twins. But I've got no idea how it's going to work in practice and how it's going to pan out. It's going to be a real, kind of, let's just see what happens.
Oh, and do you know what? I think that's all you can do. And I think I spent quite a lot of time when I was pregnant, kind of fiddling around with my website, because I was like, well, I'll do that and then it'll be perfect and then everything will be fine. But nobody said, gosh, I really like the way you spaced out that font on your website. It's, it hasn't affected the work that I've got, but it was sort of easier once my son was in the world, because I kind of then knew what I was dealing with.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's all well and good to make plans and to think, well, this is how it's going to be, but...
Yeah, and I clearly didn't have a sleeper, so I was just like, oh, okay, sure, right, well, he's not going to sleep for like the next couple of years, so there we go. So we'll just drink a lot of caffeine and it will all be fine.
Yeah, and it always is. The other thing that I've got to bear in mind as well is that the way that I generate income is by working with brands, and I'm very aware that when I have 2 small babies, there may well be quite a few brands who are interested in working with me.
Yes.
So for me, it's going to be about balancing off, okay, actually, how much time do I need to just, pull up that drawbridge and not be answering emails and not be creating content for brands, versus, oh, actually, that deal that's coming is too good to turn down. I'm going to have to do something about that, so it's just...
And then those things come into the mix of going, they're going to send a car for you and they're going to put on a nice lunch, and you're like, yeah, great, I'm doing it. You're going to feed me. That would be lovely.
Just really look after my mental health, because I had PND when my daughter was very small, and I'm just aware that I'm going to have to really look out for the triggers and, and just prioritize me rather than saying yes to fun opportunities or things that I think in theory sounds great, and then when it comes to it leaves me in, kind of rocking in the corner. I need to just, and I'm going to try to be sensible.
No, you're absolutely right. And I feel like if I had another one, I would, like last time, I guess, when during the pregnancy, like I almost put all the budget and all the sort of, I don't know, all the energy and stuff into the baby, which of course is lovely and all the rest of it. But what I actually needed was to spend a bit of money getting a great old moisturising cream to make me feel human again, and really take care of those sort of basics of myself. And I feel like I went the other way, trying to be this sort of perfect mum of going, well, we've got to have this bunting in the nursery. And it's like, he's not interested. I mean, he's never talked about that bunting now, for goodness sake. So I feel like, again, there's this pressure of I've got to create what Instagram is showing me, but also the reality of day to day. It's like, no, take that 20 quid and take yourself out for lunch, or, book something that will make you feel good as well.
I mean, this is a double-edged sword of Instagram, isn't it? Is that you see kind of, new mums on there living their best life, having these amazing heartfelt moments with their bunting, and so much of it isn't the full. It's not the full story. It's not the full picture. And I guess one thing I'm kind of keen to do when I'm in that space again is to bring a bit of honesty to it, and to reflect the reality of what it's like to have 2 newborn twins.
Yeah, and I probably have a selection of about 4,000 pictures of me in a red toweling dressing gown of just like sitting in a chair and just not doing much and not going far. And I mean, it's exciting times. What would you say to somebody who wanted to move into this sort of digital area and kind of set up their own gig and try and figure out this industry?
I would say that it's always possible. I mean, I reckon, so I started my blog 7 years ago, and I reckon for about 5 years, people have been saying, oh, well, there's no point in setting up a blog now because, it's a bit done and dusted, and, it's really hard to set something up when there are so many established blogs out there. So I would say that that's just a load of rubbish. That there is always room for new people to come along with fresh ideas, whether it's a blog or a podcast or whatever people someone might want to do. If your idea is strong enough, then you absolutely should just go for it. And I would say just really kind of try and approach it from what content do you enjoy producing? So rather than looking around and seeing what everyone else is doing and trying to do a version of that, just really think about what you love creating and base whatever you do on that instead.
Yeah. Oh, that's so key. And actually being you is far easier than trying to go, oh, I'm being the real authentic me, but also I'm going to wear that because somebody told me that I should. I mean, Breton tops and me just don't get on. I wish they did because I really love them. But I even bought one when I had a headshot branding shoot, and it just didn't do anything for me. Yeah,
no, it's funny, isn't it? And I think that the whole authenticity thing, I think, it's a really interesting, it's just a really interesting topic, because I think that people can get so caught up in, being a version of what they feel they should be. And if Breton tops aren't for you, then step away from the Breton top.
Move away from the horizontal stripe. I was thinking, actually, I was saying it to a client earlier. I remember in the early days of reality TV, people used to really proclaim, no, but I'm being the real me. And I sort of forgot that was such a thing, that, people would sort of aim to play the game where they weren't being their authentic self.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you're so right.
I'm so glad that I didn't go on a reality TV show.
Oh, me too. Just that would have been an utter nightmare. I was offered a job once on Big Brother to work behind the scenes, and I've always wondered what would have happened if I'd taken that job, because would I now be some kind of reality TV producer where I was working on like Love Island or something, and it's that kind of sliding doors moment where you think, what would have happened in my career if I'd said yes to that?
Definitely. And imagine the prep for Love Island. Like, you'd get the schedule, like, well, we're filming in July, and you're like, right, okay, the fake tan has to begin in February. Well, it would for me, being all pale and freckly. I'd be like, guys,
roofing has to start on January the 1st.
Yeah, exactly. Can you just work it into the budget? I'm going to need 48 fake tans. That would be great. And I've got one final question, which is, where would you like to be in 5 years' time?
5 years' time, I hope that I have come out of that kind of newborn toddler. I hope that I'm kind of feeling back on track with my life, which sounds terrible, but I really do view that kind of new mum stage as being a sort of time in your life when you're just tired and probably not going to be making huge waves in the work world. And so I feel like I'll have hopefully come out of that again, and I will be back on it doing something big and exciting work-wise. But I guess what I mean by that is I'm going to allow myself a bit of time over the next wee while just to take my foot off the pedal a bit and not worry too much about doing exciting work things and achieving big things. You know, it's not the most important thing that's going to be happening in the next kind of couple of years.
Well, you're going to be raising 3 small people as well, and I think that's, I was saying this to Nicola Washington on another podcast, that she was saying raising kids sometimes, or being at home, is not celebrated or rewarded in the workplace or how people talk about it. But actually, it's an amazing job, and it's the hardest job. I mean, going out to work, I feel like is far, far easier.
Yeah, so true. It's really not celebrated or rewarded or recognised, and it is one of the most important things that we can do. It's ironic.
Yeah, well, all the best with it. How exciting. I look forward to those moments of seeing not long to go, but plenty of time to get anything sorted as well.
Loads of time.
Yeah, loads of time. Hours and hours. If people want to come out and find out more or listen to the podcast, where should they go?
So they can come to notanothermummyblog.com. And on Instagram and Twitter, I am Alison Perry, so you can find me there.
Lovely, brilliant. I've loved chatting, and I feel like I want to go and make some twins. Probably not tonight. No, in a while. But
thoroughly recommend it.
Exactly. I did a podcast with Alison Perry. Now I'm pregnant. How did that happen? But yeah, that would be brilliant. Thank you so much. I loved it. Take care. Bye. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you haven't already, feel free to rate, review, and subscribe for all the brand new episodes. If you want to go deeper with my support, check out my freebies house and unlock the rooms you choose. nickyraby.com/freebies house. I also have workshops, programs, and one-on-one bespoke offerings. For prices, availability, or just to have a chat with me, go to nickyraby.com. Thank you, as always, for spending some time with me and my guests, and I'll see you next time.